Hey guys, Dwayne here. Today I want to talk a little bit about why we worry when we shouldn't. There's a lot of reasons to worry, and I think we get caught up in this scenario where we really worry and anticipate the worst on a lot of different things. And when we get into this situation with this narcissistic abusive ex, it really kind of amplifies those fears and those anxieties. And one of the things I think happens is we start worrying whenever there's no reason to worry, or when things appear to be calm, we get nervous and frustrated or anxious because we're not sure what's going on or what's going to happen next. Bottom line, the main thing is I think we get used to the stress. We get used to the anxiety and the attacks and the gaslighting and the triangulation and all the different things that our narcissistic ex uses against us, that we can get into a situation when everything's calmed down, that we're in this state of fear. We're waiting for the next shoe to drop. And typically what has happened is, at least in my case, is there would be instances where I would think I would get through it, right? I would hit a milestone and think, okay, I've finally gotten through this. It's going to get better. All of this is behind me. And then the next thing that happens is something happens, right? I mean, you get blindsided. You start relaxing. You start thinking you have your life back, and they do something else. So then what happens is whenever you get in a situation where things are starting to get better, you question it and you don't necessarily believe it because you're basically waiting for the next shoe to drop. So we get into these constant state of anxiety, and whenever it's not happening, we manifest it ourselves because it doesn't feel right. It's almost like, you almost feel more comfortable whenever it is anxious and when it is an argument and whenever there is this tit for tat going on. And it's really an unfortunate state to get in. And then, like I said, if things calm down, then you're worrying about what's wrong, right? You start playing these mental chess games with yourself, or in some cases checkers, where you basically are your own worst enemy. Now, these situations are really tough, and it's really hard to deal with because you have the past experience where things have happened, right? Where you thought things were calm, and then you found out that your ex has found some new scenario and technique to basically mess with you, and it could be a multitude of different things. That's the one thing that's kind of weird, is that these people seem to have a unique ability to find new and interesting ways to try to undermine your sanity, basically. Okay, so there's a few different ways to help you to cope with this. And right off the bat, and this is something that I tend to say a lot, is you have to recognize that what you're going through is a normal response. As soon as you get into a battle with one of these people and you go from it being a relationship or marriage, which had its own level of trauma and emotional abuse, but you thought, when you think that it was bad, you don't really realize how bad it's going to get until you start going through this. And then it ramps up to a point to where your flight and fight response really get triggered because they increase it, right? I mean, with the flying monkeys and the triangulation and manipulating of other people and the smear campaign and all that stuff, you just get bombarded and from multiple different angles. And it's really now that's the thing, right? The relationship was traumatic, but ending the relationship is like traumatic, on steroids. I mean, it like amplifies significantly. And that can be really overwhelming too, because you think that you have it figured out, right? I mean, when you get to the point where the relationship breaks down, whether you leave or they leave or whatever, you're thinking, oh, okay, all right, well, this has happened. And you get caught up in that moment of being sad or disappointed that the marriage or the relationship failed. And then out of nowhere, this bomb basically goes off, and you're like, surprised and basically freaking out because it's completely unexpected. You're blindsided by it. You didn't see it coming. And then, you're questioning your entire reality, right? And then as this stuff is happening in the beginning, it's this constant, right? Every time you seem to think that you wrapped your head around something, something new happens. That was my situation. Is like, okay, I went through the breakup or the pre-breakup of the marriage, then the realization that the marriage was going to fall apart, then coming to the realization that it was over, and thinking that, okay, we'll go left, I'll go right, she'll go left, and we'll be, work together for the good of the kids. And then the legal battle starts, and then you start questioning, you think that someone else is influencing them. You don't really, you still, at least in my case, I didn't really have the understanding and the realization of what I was really dealing with, so it didn't really make sense. So in my mind, it didn't fit within the illusion of what I thought our marriage was and the person who I thought I was married to, so I assumed that other people were influencing her. And then it just keeps progressing, right? It's just every time you turn around, something different happens. Well, what happens after a while is you get so used to that even whenever things calm down, you don't feel calm. You can't relax because you get so accustomed to there being another attack, another source of trauma that you're not expected. So when you're sitting there and everything's calm, you have this underlying feeling like, what am I missing? Something's wrong. Something's not right. Something else is happening. And it's really frustrating. So, when you're trying to cope with this, like I said, the first thing is it's normal. Every one of us, I think, who has been through this has gone through this. This isn't necessarily something I've talked about in the past, so I don't really think I've had an opportunity to get comments from people, but I would venture to guess that most of us have, when things did appear to calm down and they were calm for a while, that it made us a little uptight and we're basically like looking over our shoulder and, checking the mailbox and waiting for the next thing to happen. Now, here's the thing that, one of the questions that you really need to ask yourself, when you start worrying about things or thinking back to whenever something did happen and you were worried about it, did that fear actually happen? Okay. And what I'm saying by that is if your ex made some type of accusation or threat, you're not going to see the kids, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, or the court's going to do this to you. Did it really happen? Now, there are certain times that if you act negatively and you take the bait and you respond negatively, you can make some of those things happen. But for the most part, if you remain calm, a lot of it is just hot air. So what I would ask you to think about when you're looking at these situations, and guys, it's tough in the beginning of it because you don't really know what's going to happen, right? You're afraid that whenever you do hear some of these scenarios and these horror stories, and realistically, if you look at some of the comments and some of the stuff that people have said, and even what I've said, there are some not so great comments in there. However, a lot of them aren't necessarily catastrophic. And what I mean by that is one of the things, at least that's helped me to get through things, is typically, everything generally works out. It may not be exactly the way I want it to work out, but if I look at, I look through my entire life, every time I've had some type of catastrophe or something come up that I thought was super serious, the divorce, and even beyond that, typically it never was as bad as it was, or whatever happened had a fundamental good at the other end of it. So, and I think that's one of the main ways to kind of cope with this is to try to take a step back and realize that, a lot of the anxiety and the worry that we go through is kind of self-created drama on our own part, to where we take a little, either it's the unknown and we're anticipating what they're doing, so we manifest in our heads this really negative scenario, or they are attacking us and we're thinking that what they're saying, there might be some truth to it. Most of the time it isn't. This isn't a pleasant experience. We can all relate to that, but What I would say is when you get to those situations where things do calm down just a little bit, really try to take a moment to enjoy that peace. You know, and that's easier said than done a lot of times. But what I would ask you to do is whenever you get in those situations where the ex is basically leaving you alone, things have kind of calmed down and things are going pretty good, you know, and in an hour or tomorrow or in a week, maybe that would change, but try to take a moment to enjoy that little bit of peace you do get. And don't ruin it, don't ruin it by trying to really worry or get anxious that something else is coming around the corner. I mean, it may come around the corner, but you can deal with that when it happens, but try to make the most of the situation you have. Okay, so I just kind of wanted to touch base on that because that's kind of a situation that I've been going through personally, where I've been anticipating some things that may or may not happen, and it's really counterproductive. I mean, there are some things that you can do to kind of like, okay, well, they might, like I said, the chess move or the checkers game, but we should all be playing chess, not checkers, where it's like you anticipate maybe what they're going to do, you plan for it, put it in the contingency, in the back, in your back pocket, be prepared for it, but then try not to worry about it and enjoy the good times that you do get. Okay, so on that, I'm going to wrap this video up. If you have some other comments that you want to add on how you cope with whenever you're feeling really anxious or worried whenever there really isn't a reason, my guess is that a lot of us have gone through this, and this isn't just me. And share those in the comments. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you know somebody who's going through this and this might help them, please share it, and I will talk to you guys on the next video. Take care. Bye.